Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Joey Francis, your life, love, and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining me. Attachment theory. And I want to start off by saying I am just going to gloss over with a good bit of information because there is a lot when it comes to attachment theory. I'm essentially going to cover the most popular 3.5 different types, and you'll get to half when we get to it. And I just want to say that if by any chance anything that I say resonates with you, maybe it's worthwhile for you to dig a little deeper and go do some research on your own. Although I am going to try to provide you with some ideas and answers and maybe just open up your mind to some new theories about you, yourself, your dating life, how you act, how other people act, so forth and so on, because information is the key to everything. So starting off with attachment theory, and don't mind me because I literally have my notes in front of me. This was intensive. I actually had to do some research for this, So we're going to start off with the most prevalent attachment style or type. That is the secure person. And luckily enough, it's about 50% of the population. Now, granted, because we are older, those 50%, the number's actually less because those are the people that are in great long-term marriages and long-term relationships and aren't necessarily single. So just to give you some ideas there. But the secure type, they are the type of person that has healthy expectations, can communicate effectively, usually has a higher level of self-esteem, and doesn't get anxious when they're apart from their partner. They also have the ability to maintain emotional balance. That's probably one of the most important part of the secure relationship type or attachment type. And like I mentioned, about 50% of the population. So thank God for that. Now we're going to move on to the next one. That is the anxious attachment style. These are people that are uncertain, lacking self-esteem. They crave intimacy, but are usually worried that they aren't good enough for other people. So they tend to cling and be very, very clingy. These are the ones that tend to have trust problems. And if they do end up getting into a relationship, that relationship almost engulfs their life and they become truly obsessed with their partner, what their partner's thinking, what they're doing, where are they? What are you doing? That sort of thing. And they tend to overreact, essentially, when somebody doesn't communicate with them or starts to become a little bit distant or just busy with life for that matter. They'll jump the gun and be like, oh, they don't like me anymore. They're ghosting me. And then next thing you know, it's like, yeah, sorry, just having a busy day. Sorry, I couldn't get back to you sooner. And unfortunately, some of these people have the ability to use guilt and other manipulative behavior to keep you feeling bad so that you stick around, because they'll essentially do whatever it takes to keep you sticking around. And like I mentioned, they're unbelievably needy and clingy. Now moving on to the next, the avoidant, dismissive relationship style or type. These are the people that are essentially the creators of the situationship. They are scared of closeness and try to avoid emotional connection. They try to be very self-sufficient and they hate the idea of having to rely on people and people relying on them. They like to feel that they don't need others. And essentially, the closer that someone gets to them, the more they tend to withdraw. They're very, very uncomfortable with deep emotions and emotional type of relationships. People tend to accuse them actually of being distant or closed off. And funny enough, there are some of the avoidant that will literally try to flip it back on you and tell you that they're the normal ones and you are in fact too clingy and too needy. So keep an eye out for that, or maybe that's you. As I mentioned, they would rather casual relationships than deep long-term ones. Now, that's 3. Here's the point 5. It's actually a combination of avoidant and anxious. So like the anxious person, they are really longing for deep connection and a deep relationship where, you know, people are essentially showering them with attention and love and giving them everything that they need. But like the avoidant, when they don't get those things, unlike the anxious person that will sit there and try to get their claws in you and dig deeper and try, the anxious avoidant will want that deep relationship. But the minute that they're not getting it, boom, they're like, you know what? I don't need you. You know what? That's fine. Listen, you don't like me. It's fine. And I'm sure we've all come across similar type people where they drastically want a relationship with you. More than anything, they want a relationship with you. But the minute that you take a little too long to respond to them or become busy or whatever the case is, they're very like, you know, pushing you away. Like, you know what? It's fine. I don't need you. I don't need you in my life. I don't need you. I don't want you. You clearly don't like me. And it's like, well, like, stop overreacting. Like, this isn't a big deal. But they push nonetheless. So that is the avoidant, anxious person. Now, that's all I'm going to cover for those things. So if any of that, for the most part, resonates with you, like I said, please do a little dig deeper into the research on this, because it explains a lot. Because sometimes we are these things without even realizing it. And unfortunately, the reason we are this way usually stems from childhood traumas. So if, you know, seeing a professional doesn't scare you, and it really shouldn't, please do so. But let's dig a little bit deeper. So what happens when an anxious person and an avoidant person get together? Well, this is literally the anxious person's worst nightmare. So again, if any of this resonates with you, you become part of this vicious circle where the anxious person is essentially continuously chasing the avoidant, where they're trying to get their claws in them and have this deeper, loving relationship as they, you know, picture inside their head. They want this more than anything else. And yet the avoidant person, as things get a little too hot and heavy, they push, they walk away, you know, or push and disappear for a couple of days. And then maybe they're like, shit, you know, I really miss them, or I want them, or whatever the case is. And then they come back. And because the avoidant, the anxious wants it so badly, they're just going to take them back. And this is actually a good time to mention that if you happen to be someone with the anxious type, to be very, very careful, because you are prey for narcissists. They will come at you and yo-yo you and keep you wanting more and keep you coming back, and then like destroying you, knocking you down, and then apologizing and coming back and playing this hot and cold game. Very similar to like an avoidant. Now, avoidant narcissist, you know, not necessarily the same thing, but they do have some crossover traits. But you need to definitely be careful and you know, have some like self-respect for yourself, so that if anybody does yo-yo you or plays hot and cold, that you essentially walk away. And I'm going to get into some more of that after. Okay, so that's what happens if you're an anxious and an avoidant in a relationship together. Now, what if it's an anxious person and an anxious person? It almost sounds like it would work, and chances are it would, but it would be an extremely codependent relationship where essentially both parties are continuously walking on eggshells because things seem to be going well. What ends up happening is now that they're overthinking. In the back of their head, they're thinking to themselves like, "Oh my God, like I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to scare this person away from me." And they're both essentially having the same conversation inside their head, and because the anxious, wanting this deep relationship, they don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to upset somebody. So at the same time, they're not exactly forward with their feelings and how they feel and what they want and how they want to be treated. So these two people, like a very codependent relationship, it is always stressful to a certain degree because they're always worried about saying the wrong thing to one another. But it ends up working out at the end because, they both want the same thing. And then there's the avoidant and the avoidant. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially the greatest friends with benefits relationship that's ever existed because both parties don't want to get too deep. They literally want someone that they can go out with, have a good time. And, when things start getting a little too emotional, a little too deep, it's like, okay, let's pump the brakes here. We don't need to do this part. And because both of them are essentially in the same group, they're both like, yeah, no, totally. This, what we have is great the way it is. Let's not mess it up. And what else are you supposed to say about that? Unless it comes to a point where one of them might start having deeper feelings and then, pulling back, and that whole hot and cold thing comes back into play. Now, what happens when we have a secure and an avoidant? Now, people say, or professionals say, as I've read and done some research on this, that part of the way of getting or changing your style is to be with someone that's secure, because someone that's secure can almost teach you the way to become secure, right? For instance, someone that is avoidant. You'd imagine that a secure person wants a deeper, meaningful relationship. But here's the thing, because they're able to communicate, which is key in all of this, they might give the avoidant person the space that they need. They might offer the avoidant person like, hey, listen, like, let's talk. Tell me what you're feeling. Why do you feel that I'm suffocating you, so to speak? Because that's like one of their greatest fears. And maybe in that environment, the avoidant person might be able to open up and say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. This is why this is why that. And, when things are out in the open, they're easier to be deciphered. So that's the secure and avoidant person. Now, what if it's a secure and an anxious relationship? Well, again, very similarly, the secure person has the ability to communicate and regulate their own emotions. So they have the ability, granted, provided that they know that the anxious person requires this or is there, or they're dating an anxious person, to offer them reassurance. Okay. Hey, I love you. I like you. I'm not going anywhere, and continuously offer this reassurance that might make the anxious person less anxious, because they're now being verbally told, and obviously the person's actions should match what they're saying, but they're being told that, hey, listen, it's cool, right? I understand how you feel. You don't have to worry. I am not leaving you. I am not going to hurt you. Now, let's be honest, to a certain degree, talk is cheap, right? Because if at the end of the day, if you ask a thief if they're a thief, they're not going to tell you that they're a thief. And the same thing goes when it comes to other people and dating and relationships. If you ask someone like, hey, are you a good person? What do you think they're going to tell you? No, I'm a piece of shit. I'm just going to sleep with you and probably not call you the next day. And you know what? Maybe like in a couple weeks time, when I'm bored and feeling like it, I might call you up and try to sleep with you again. Nobody's going to say that out loud, right? So you do have to be careful. And, obviously the secure person has the ability to communicate and hopefully communicate effectively and genuinely. And, the anxious person can see that. And in that case, that anxious person becomes less anxious, and maybe even in the future, because of that bond that they have with communication, that they stop being anxious altogether and then turn into being a secure person, right? Yeah. So what if you are anxious or avoidant? What can you do? Well, like I said originally, dating someone that is secure can help. Can. Doesn't mean it will for sure, because at the same time, that secure person may not want to deal with you. Like, let's be honest. But here's the thing. If listening to this right now, you resonate with something that I've said, whether it be about anxious or not secure, avoidant, Jesus. If you're listening to this and something that I've said resonated with you about being anxious or avoidant, I'm going to say to you, congratulations. Because the first step to anything is becoming self-aware and realizing that we might have one of these issues or one of these problems. And that is always the first step, because you cannot fix what you don't know, right? So being able to realize that, hey, you know what he said about anxious really resonates with me, or what he said about avoidant really resonates with me. That's the first step. And then we can go deeper from there. And maybe even, yeah. Okay. Maybe it's time we better communicate our skills, specifically the ability to have the hard conversations. This is a big one, because again, with communication, a lot of things can be sorted out and can be figured out, because once we know what the problem is, we can figure out how to fix it. It's just the way it is. So if we realize we have X issue and we learn to be able to open up to people and to communicate what we're feeling, how we're feeling, why we're feeling, maybe even these issues that we have, and to be, completely transparent with someone and express our emotional needs and practice acceptance of ourselves, right? Then we can risk being authentic and direct, because we should be proud of ourselves, right? We should love ourselves for who we are. And at least that way, if we're interested in somebody, they will know, exactly what they're getting into, and they will know exactly how to deal with us, and we will know exactly how to deal with them because of that communication. Not to mention, we wouldn't necessarily be dating people on false pretenses and essentially fake being something we're not, as well as manipulating someone to stay with us regardless. And I think that's the big takeaway, is for us to be who we are, proud of who we are, especially if we're working through something, because it's hard. It's hard to work through something. A bunch of episodes ago, probably 5 episodes ago, I was talking about loving yourself and affirmations and being positive. And people commented and said, if you have issues, you have issues, right? No matter how many times you click your heels, those issues aren't going to disappear without the work. I agree. But here's the thing. It is much easier for us to deal with issues starting at a positive place. See, unlike the movies and the odd stories you hear online, when people hit rock bottom, they tend to stay at rock bottom. This isn't the movies where it's like, I hit rock bottom, oh, there's no place to go but up, and then boom, they're just gonna fix themselves and skyrocket. No, that's not the way it works. It is very, very hard for each and every one of us to get out of bed, to move forward when we're at our lowest low. That is why things like therapy exist. That is why the, self-help industry is absolutely massive, because people like me and the other ones that do this sort of thing are trying to help you become the best you could possibly be, right? And if you start off in a good place, it's much easier to move forward and better yourself, because you're starting from a place of progress almost, right? You're looking yourself in the mirror saying, you know what? I look really good today. Maybe I'll take the stairs. I'm feeling good today. You know what? I'll take the stairs instead of the elevator. I'm gonna eat the healthy choice instead of the junk food, because I'm feeling good today. I want to do something good for me. And so forth and so on, and baby steps until you become the person you want to be. And that's why I say, be positive. Start off from a good place, as opposed to always dogging on yourself and making fun of yourself, because that's just going to keep you low. I know it completely went off what we were talking about, but you know what? This sort of even connects with this, because avoidant or anxious people, they have low self-esteems. They're worried that they're not good enough. So what if you thought you were good enough? Would you still be anxious? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe this is if I fix something within me, the rest of my life improves drastically, And this happens when we go to therapy. This happens when we read self-help books and come to a realization about our lives. This happens when we start working out and improving our fitness level. Every single thing we do has a drastic change on our life. So, self-esteem issues, you can even start with a daily affirmation. I am worthy of love. I love me. I'm a great human being. People want to know me, and so forth and so on. And as you start to believe this, it will start to impact your life in other ways. Well, you might want to dress better, might put more effort into yourself, doing your hair. Then from that point, maybe it's hey, you know what? I can get into better shape. And then you start eating better and working out. And hey, you know what? Instead of me spending, 40 hours a week watching Netflix, I'm going to read a book. I'm going to learn a new skill. I'm going to better myself, get a better job, so forth and so on. But that only starts from a place of positive outlook, as opposed to I'm a piece of shit, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I'm fat, I'm ugly. Because saying those things to yourself are going to hold you back. And again, that coincides with the avoidant person or the anxious person. I keep getting them mixed up. The anxious person. Let's see. What else did I write here? Here's the facts. We are who we are. As long as we are being our authentic selves, the best to our ability, then a genuine relationship is just around the corner. Provided, I wrote that down, provided you work on yourself, as I just ranted on for the past 3 minutes. Here's some kind words to you. There is no such thing as perfect. But if you read my book, I don't technically believe that. There is no such thing as perfect, but there is such thing as perfect for you. And if there is such thing as perfect for you, that means there is such thing that you would be perfect for someone else. So just to keep that in mind, again, starting from a positive place. Again, you have to work through your shit though. You have to, come to terms with who you are in a positive way. But, and here's the downside. That also means rejection will be part of your journey, unfortunately. And you are going to eventually at some point reject others, and other people aren't going to reject you. And you need to understand that I can't say not to take it personally, because if somebody doesn't like you, it's pretty personal. But having a higher level of self-esteem and some logic, you understand that, you know what, this person isn't for me. Despite how much I may like them, this person isn't for me. And if they're not for me, then it's not going to be like, even if I did get them, it wouldn't necessarily be a happy life, right? Because they're there for the sake of being there, while I'm there because I really want to be there. So it would be better for you to find someone who doesn't reject you, someone who likes you and loves you for who you are and how you are, right? Good. Here's the thing. Some of us have the ability to become self-aware and to look back and fix things, to change our beliefs and move on from this. And other people may not. And if that happens to be you, that you aren't someone that has the ability to change or has the ability to become self-aware, but you might recognize some issues here and there, just like I said at the beginning, go get professional help. There's nothing to be ashamed of if you need someone to talk to. Just like everything in life, we have to learn. We have to learn how to do things. We weren't born and knew how to walk. We weren't born and, knew how to eat. We weren't born. Well, maybe the eating thing we could figure out because babies put everything in their mouth. So let's just scratch that. But we weren't born with the ability to walk over to a toilet and, use the lavatory. Okay. We were taught these things. We weren't born on how to drive. We weren't born on how to use a computer or a cell phone. We learned these things. And just as we learned these things, some of us need to learn on how to deal with our emotions, how to deal with our thoughts, our issues, and how to move forward from those things. And if that's you, there is nothing to be ashamed of. This isn't something that was taught in school. This is something that some people can figure out on their own and some people can't. And if you're the person that can't, well, you can still learn. It's never too late. This is where learning about, emotional intelligence, or if reading books and watching videos isn't your thing and you need to be like physically taught, to go and get professional help from a therapist. That is what they're doing. That is their job, right? And by doing this, I promise you, if you go to therapy, if you're someone that needs therapy and goes to therapy, I promise you, you're going to end up at the other end of it saying to yourself, why didn't I do this sooner? Because that's how it's going to feel for you. You're going to feel like your eyes have been opened up and it's like, wow, you know what? This makes so much sense. I figured out so much about myself. This is really incredible. So please, that's it for my notes. That's it for the episode, essentially. Things like this, they're important to know. They're important to know. Like even just what I told you today, because if you do recognize that you are an avoidant or you are anxious, or even if you're secure, you might recognize it in somebody else, like when you're out there dating and in a relationship, and having a better understanding of the other person you're dating or yourself. You know how to approach things differently. And I'm not saying that, like, if you're a secure person and then you realize after listening to this that, the person I'm dating is an avoidant or the person I'm dating is anxious. Maybe they don't know that. Maybe having them listen to this might help. Maybe being able to communicate and say, hey, I've been doing some research and I came across this thing and it kind of sounds like you. Like, what are your thoughts? And approaching it in obviously the nicest and safest manner possible, and not trying to start a fight or anything, because if you point a finger at someone, they might get a little hostile with you because nobody likes fingers pointed at them. But nonetheless, if you're trying to create a healthy, safe space, this might help. And if you need to go deeper, please do so. And if you need help, please get help. Please, 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 please. Figuring these things out, and essentially me trying to, enlighten you and obviously trying to reach as many people as possible, is only going to create a safer, better dating pool overall for everyone. At least that's my hope. Trying to make change, trying to make a difference, so that us older single people have a good shot of having that happily ever after. And on that note, if you need some self-help books that might improve things, you can get some at joeyfrancis.com. That's JOEYFRANCESS.com. And there you can order my books, Fate is Bullshit, A Logical Guide to Happiness, which is essentially a logical guide to happiness, as well as The Logic of Me, a guided journal for self-discovery, where things like this might benefit from my journal, because it will force you, provided you're honest with yourself, it will force you to dig deeper into yourself and figure shit out, or at least put yourself on that path. And if by any chance you have any questions for me or ideas for a podcast that you would like me to talk about, by all means, please send me a message right there, and I will get back to you as soon as I can, or create a whole podcast based on what you ask. So, as I say, love yourself, as that's the one thing I keep remembering to be able to that I say at the end of these things. Love yourself and go out into the world making the best decisions for you. And while you're doing it, don't hurt anybody. Don't be a jackass, okay? Kill them with kindness. Be nice. You know what? That's what I'm going to start saying. Love yourself and kill them with kindness. Every little bit helps. Until next time.